we're really talking about the human dimension, the human element of things when we're talking about our buildings. I'm a huge fan of promoting that the materials we use aren't the problem. It's the way we use them. Like John said, you can have the greatest, most sophisticated, innovative system in a building. If we don't know how to use it, it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So we're going to talk about the ladies and gentlemen that are charged with operating our buildings. And I'm going to ask you a couple questions. The first one I always ask them when we do this training is, what are the 3 biggest energy users in buildings? Who wants to take a guess? I should have gone to you first. Heating and air, HVAC. Our first assumption is it's systems, lighting. But we always say men, women, and children, 3 biggest consumers of energy in a building, without a doubt. Who here works or lives in a managed property, or works in a managed property, office building? Of y'all, how many of you guys know your building operator's name? Okay, a few less. I think this is a skewed crowd, but not everyone. Not everyone. The way we look at this with working with building operators, and you'll hear me use the term operator, engineer, superintendent, we're talking about the people that run our buildings. We think about these folks like Snyder from One Day at a Time. Anyone remember One Day at a Time? It's going way back. Snyder was the building soup. He was kind of always around, wasn't an integral character, but he's always there to take care of stuff when things need taken care of. And so we started asking, what happens when you take care of Snyder? What can he really do then when he's not just a fringe character? So in the daily life of an engineer, which of these commonly happens? What does he or she commonly hear? The first 3 probably, right? How often does they hear someone say, hey, I'd like to save energy, but I don't know how? Or even better, my office feels great today. Doesn't happen. These are the guys and gals that are kind of behind the inner workings of the building. Yet, they're the front lines in our defense against wasted resources. It could be energy, it could be water, it could be waste as in resources, trash. They're the little old man behind the curtain, the almighty powerful Wizard of Oz. They hit the buttons, they pull the levers. Incredibly important job. They're probably one of the most underutilized resources we have in how we look at the built environment. And they're an incredibly diverse group, which will come up again and again. You have folks with high school equivalencies, college degrees. You have PEs, very broad backgrounds that are charged with these jobs. So we saw in our work an opportunity to really work with these folks, to teach them the why behind building performance. We all kind of get that a building performs certain ways and we can see what it does. But not often enough are we asking, why is it behaving the way it is? I think why is the most powerful question in the English language. And we really want to work with these folks on empowering them to start asking that question and when they're running their buildings. So I'm going to use 3 contextual examples as I kind of go through this. The first is our work with a program called Better Bricks. It's funded by the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. And the Commercial Real Estate Market Partner Program is really aimed at working with commercial real estate companies, property managers, asset managers, owners, at the highest organizational levels for organizational change, as well as in the transactions they perform in the market. The goal was, we thought if we work with the market leaders, we can kind of transform the market, bring everyone else along. We're still working on that. We've also had the chance to do something similar with Tennessee Valley Authority. We've built a campus strategic energy management pilot program with them and University of Tennessee, Knoxville. A big piece of which was working with their operators and engineers on their built environment. That's going to be an interesting one to look at, given the state of the buildings on the campus. And the last one, which is kind of the next evolution, which we'll get to at the end, is the Seattle 2030 District, which we heard mentioned yesterday, I believe, with Kathy's presentation. And just so you know, their mandate is meeting the Architecture 2030 Challenge, which is essentially 50% reduction across not just energy, but energy, water, waste, transportation. And they're trying to do it on a district level in downtown Seattle. And that is being led not by the public sector. That's private sector actors. That's the building owners, the building managers, the asset managers. So in our approach, our theory behind the way we designed this was couched in both behavior change best practices as well as cognitive theory and learning theory, pedagogical theory. And I'm not going to go through all these, but one of the real key things we wanted to focus in on was creating a sense of we, of team. This quote was one of my favorite ones from an operating engineer we spoke with. You forget that these guys and girls are really working really behind the scenes. If you ever go to your building manager, building operator's office, it's not a corner office with windows. It's generally in the basement, or it's in the elevator penthouse. And let me tell you, the elevator penthouse is not a penthouse, okay? They're kind of out of sight, out of mind. And it can really feel like that as you're working that position. So we wanted to bring these folks together and say, you know what, you're not alone in this. There are others working on this that are a part of your company, and they have great ideas, and we know you have great ideas. We also really wanted to not just put them in front of a textbook, put them in front of a toolkit. We do some classroom stuff to give the fundamentals, but then we get them into the building as a team, walk them through, looking at how's the building performing, asking those questions we want them to ask. Why is it windy when I walk in the front door? Things like that. Oh, sorry, one last one. The last two, I just did the last one. This idea of behavior change of connecting to both sides of our brain, emotion and logic. We really want to empower these folks to have a conversation with the decision makers, the people that hold the purse strings, on why changes are needed and why they're important. Both justified in logic of finances and energy, but also why is it good for branding? Why is it good for productivity? Why would it make a better environment, a better place for the tenants to live and work in? Quickly, I'll kind of just walk through the basic program design. I don't want to get too deep into this. If you have more questions, please pull me aside and ask me. But essentially, it's going to be a mix of a little bit of classroom training and a lot of team training in the buildings. The first of which is just building scoping, we call it, the real basics. This is for the engineers. This is like an ASHRAE level 1 light walkthrough. Looking at a building focused on operations and maintenance and really looking for those things that are low cost or even better, no cost, that can have an impact on energy performance. Then we get them into the building. They walk through it with the instructor who's an engineer. They follow him as he does the scoping, and they're filling out the report along with them, asking questions. We pull them back in to talk about what was found. Why was it happening? We get them to start prioritizing, building an action plan. If this is your list of symptoms in your building that you need to deal with to improve energy performance, what would you do first and why? Ask that question, why? Get them back into the building, except now they're leading the walkthrough and our engineers following. We want to get them as quickly as possible doing this on their own, because what we find is experiential learning, whether it's this or it's traditional education, that's what sticks. Get out and use it. That's what sticks. Anyone who ever played out here on a sports team? I played lacrosse and soccer. If our practices had been sitting in a classroom and chalk talks and talking about the rules of lacrosse, I had no idea how to play. You had to be out doing it in order to really figure it out. Bring them back together, talk about what they found, what they've done, and this is really kind of releasing them back into the wild, as we say. Get them out there doing it on their own. But the critical piece, which we can't forget, is following up. 6 to 8 months later, we come back and say, what have you done? What have you found? What do you need help on? What's working, what's not? It's just like homework in school. You can hand out homework, but if you don't collect it back in, no one's going to do it. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, I'm going to show you a quick video. This program is not BOC. It's not CEM. We really want to keep it simple. We teach them to look up, down, and around. We teach them to ask, why is there dust accumulating on this windowsill and not the others? Why is the building lobby whistling on cold days? And so this is actually one of our engineers Mr. Brad Weaver. And there's a series of videos on YouTube, but this is a short one, talking about night walks. Our buildings are unoccupied majority of the time. I think the figure, total hours in a year is 8,760. And the general operating hours in a year are 2,600. So a big piece of what we try to teach these folks to do is go see the building at night.
I tell people that their buildings are like Swiss cheese, and they get upset with me. And what they really need to understand is that from this day forward, it's an opportunity to make things better. We've actually got leaves being sucked into the building. So the question that comes up, do we have air pressure coming all the way through the building? Because we've got openings on all 4 directions in this building, east, south, northwest. So is the wind just passing through, or is it actually pulling in? Okay, this confirms what we were looking at down in the main lobby, that we had a massive amount of airflow into the building, and the question was, if the cold air's coming in, there's conditioned air somewhere in the building that's escaping. The dampers on the heat recovery coils that we saw outside were wide open, leading us to believe that we had air loss through there. Because of the area, it was so large an area that the air velocity was very small, and it's very hard to feel, and a lot of people might miss it. They may not understand that. Coming back into the fan room and looking at the vane axial fan now that is running, this is cycling completely on air pressure. So we have so much air escaping out of the building that it's spinning this fan at a couple hundred RPM. It's a large fan, which indicates there's a whole lot of airflow coming through it. There's more damper leakage somewhere else in the building. So we're not done finding stuff yet.
All right. Brad's amazing. I call Brad the building whisperer. It's incredible what he can do, and his strength really is getting these folks to ask why. If you ask why enough times, you're going to find the ultimate root cause of the issue, and that's what Brad's really, really good at. He can stand in a lobby, feel the air pressure, and know that something's going on the top floor. And it's really helping these folks understand that and start to look for that themselves and feel like they can recognize that. That's really what we're trying to do. We really want to build fundamental knowledge of their building. I've heard mentioned a couple times today about what happens when operators and engineers transition in and out of buildings. You're essentially left on your own to learn how the building runs. One thing we try to equip them with is a basic operations manual. This is like getting handed the keys to your car, so that someone's not just walking in and saying, what do I do? The old guy's gone. I have no idea how this building runs. It's essentially a quick snapshot. What's in your building? How's it run? What are maybe some of the special characteristics or behaviors of the building systems? And just getting them to document that alone is really, really beneficial for them looking at the whole building as a system. There's also something we use called a symptom diagnosis tool. I promise you, this is not what it looks like. It's not just a worksheet from junior high. There's a spreadsheet, and then it drives you to a website. But the idea, again, is just asking why. There's a list of common building symptoms. You check off, is this in my building? And then you start asking why. What's causing this? What are the common causes of this? And now you start to think about, my building as a system, why is there airflow? Why does the southeast corner on the 3rd floor smell like the bathroom? Right? Hopefully it's decreasing their tenant complaints, which is always a benefit. But what we're finding is a lot of these things are also decreasing energy consumption. This last one is the poker cards, right? Why do we have poker cards? How many folks here, when you were your first day in class, were the ones that raise your hand and be like, oh, me, I'll contribute? I guarantee some of y'all here were like, me. John, thank you for volunteering. When you get all these guys and gals together in one room to begin with, the team idea is still somewhat foreign. To get them to participate, we try to incorporate a lot of interactive games. So every time someone contributes a question and they answer a comment, they get a card. And at the end of the session, we play poker with the cards we have, and we have prizes. And you'd be amazed when you show the prizes at the beginning of the class, how many folks all of a sudden are really quickly willing to contribute. And I'll have a great example of this coming up. So what have we found? The first evolution of this was with a company called Wright Runstead & Company, who was one of the market leaders in the Seattle market. They've got about 6 million square feet of office space in that market, privately held, office development and management firm. We took almost all their operators into the first kind of scoping one-on-one session. It's about 30 engineers, and we brought them together and we put them into 2 teams of roughly 12 or 13 folks each. Took them through that kind of training evolution. They've now scoped their entire portfolio repeatedly, and they found, on average, 15% savings through low-cost, no-cost efforts. And that's ongoing. That's not one time. More importantly, Wright Rust has made this part of job descriptions and performance evaluations. They've institutionalized this behavior. It's part of the core approach to building management. They're also using it in competitive bids. When they go out to bid, especially on existing properties they already manage, if the building owner decides to rebid the building management, they have this coming in and say, by the way, this is all the stuff we found as part of our approach that we corrected for you. And it's become a real differentiator for them within that market. We got lots of great quotes on the value of this training. These are from the operators themselves. This one is highlighting, the fact that we get together as a group and exchange ideas is one of the greatest things they find. And I can't overestimate that in any way. Get these guys out of their building offices, out of their basement offices, and show them that they have good ideas. Really, let them show off to their peers, to you, to management. It goes a long, long ways with how these folks feel about their job. The second evolution, this one was really interesting. University of Tennessee, Knoxville, along with Tennessee Valley Authority. About 30,000 students, publicly funded university, roughly 236 buildings, almost 15 million square feet of managed space. This would be quite a large company on its own. Pretty big energy consumption. Past couple of years has been about $15 million annual energy bill. Combine that with the fact that their budgets have been slashed the past 2 years. The state of Tennessee funds them. The state of Tennessee economy is not good. They've cut that budget that goes to that university by 50%. It's crippling. Yet, there's an opportunity here because all the operators and engineers we met with and brought into class, they were bitter, they were cynical. You can understand why. But they still cared incredibly deeply about that campus and about the way it operated. Really inspiring to us. So we took about 100 of these folks through that first class, brought them all into one place for 3 hours. A little different approach. Rather than just buildings now, though, we're now breaking down silos. We brought folks in from the construction shops, right? The cabinetry, the HVAC, the plumbing. We also brought in the managers, the foremen of all those teams into one room. And let me tell you that this session was cathartic for this group. We didn't get through maybe a third of the training slides. It became literally a gushing of, here's the problems, here's why I'm angry, here's why I'm frustrated. You had operations guys pointing at the shop guys, saying, you're the problem. No, you're the problem. It was really tense, but you could feel after a while the tension kind of lift as people started to recognize that we're still all on the same team, that we're not actually fighting against each other. That was really, really important. And when we talk about some of the results, I think you'll make that connection. We then took a fragment of that group. We couldn't take all 100 because the campus has to run. So we had to leave people in buildings. So we took about 30 into the team-based approach. And they're still realizing the savings from this approach, but our estimates based on what we found through the building scoping was they can find a quick 20% at no cost. So when your operations budget has lost $30 million, this is a good thing. And this wasn't necessarily strictly energy-driven things. A lot of this was just keeping the building running. A lot of buildings on that campus were way past getting the correct maintenance they needed. So what's happened? A couple of things. Their facilities department has had a complete reorganization. They're in the middle of it. They've broken down the silos, and they've gone from a building by building approach, and they're using a zone maintenance approach. So that you no longer have an operator in a building who's separated from an HVAC shop worker. They're now on a team together, and they're covering one zone together. They've also created what they call a STAR team. One of their mandates is energy efficiency in the buildings. That's just it's a group of 6. That's what they do, along with assisting research, along with helping unclog their deferred maintenance backlog, which is massive. And real quick, this is Bill. Let's see if you can hear him.
Now that we're trying to focus, of course, I've always been energy minded anyway. I mean, I do it at home, but here, you know, I see a lot of things now that would help, and I know, and in our case, it could save some jobs, you know. So.
Well, that shuts down abruptly. But just real quick, how they viewed this was as critical to their jobs. Right? These guys, they're inside the buildings, but they understand budget shortfalls. They understand the potential of savings. So what we found from this approach is, again, getting empowered and inquisitive operators. Giving them the room to ask why. I love this question. Does this system need to be running? How rarely does that question get asked? And yet so powerful and such huge potential from a savings standpoint. Giving them a more of a holistic, whole building, whole systems view. How do dirty filters impact performance? If you replace dirty filters with new filters, do you think your energy consumption goes up or down? Who thinks up? Who thinks putting new filters in makes energy consumption go down? Goes up. More airflow. Requires machines to work more to push air through, as opposed to just getting stopped and pressurizing the room. Because what we don't forget is when you pressurize the room, it finds other ways to escape, believe it or not. Another one of my favorites is control systems. One of the most common things we find is control systems say the building's working great, and they're not hooked up to anything. But an operator's not going to know this. They get handed a building, they're just going to assume what the system's telling them is correct. So they think it's cycling normally, it's running 24/7. That's a lot of energy being used. So what are some of the opportunities we think beyond this? Coaching matters. Whose favorite class in school involved someone lecturing to them for 2.5 hours? It really matters. This isn't about lecturing and content delivery. This is about building capacity. And you do that by giving information, but then also coaching them through the use and application of that information. Tools need to be simple. That's not job specific. We all agree on that. If you're going to give me a new tool to use, make it simple, make it intuitive, make it something I can just put into play right away. Homework, collect it. It's the idea of follow-up. One of the greatest kind of quotes on what is the value of the program was one of the operators said, I love the fact that someone comes back and asks me what I've done. I'm accountable now. I can't let it slip off my plate. And this last one's critical from a strategic planning point of view. If we don't have a goal for these folks to work for, if we don't have a goal for us to work towards, it's just motion. Right? Maybe we'll eventually get in the general direction where we want to go, but it'll take us a lot longer. It'll be a lot more expensive to do so. So the next evolution for us on this one is with the Seattle 2030 district. As I said, they've got this goal of 50% reduction on resource consumption at the district level in downtown Seattle. This is being driven by the property managers, the asset managers, the owners. And right now it's about 28 million square feet of building space. And this is in an area where the average Energy Star score is already 78. So these are right now primarily the market leaders or that next group of folks that saw the market leaders and didn't want to be left behind are a part of this. And our proposed approach, we're still hammering out the details, is to go after a different segments. We've worked with the big fellas, right? The millions of square feet. We want to know, does this work with Joe Smith, who owns one building under 100,000 square feet? Is that market being underserved? Chances are they probably don't have the resources to even send their guys to formalized training, like BOC. If they do, it's a much bigger impact on their bottom line. We want to try and pull these guys together, no longer from buildings within the same company or departments within the same company, but we're going to try and bring them together in a team across companies. 10 to 15 of them from different buildings that are from different ownership, different management, different representation, and put them in a room together and see what happens. We're going to take them through that kind of same process in the classroom, but now we're going to give a lot more one-on-one attention. Because these guys aren't part of a bigger company, they're not going to have as much of that immediate team surrounding when we let them go back out and do what they do. Really critical, we're going to work on them on establishing a goal with whoever their decision maker is. That's a big gap we've seen in this market, is just not even setting that goal of putting that foot out there and saying, I'm going to go for this. What we're going to get, we don't know yet. We don't know. I have faith it's going to work. I think we'll find that the program needs to be tweaked and changed to fit this group, but I think we'll find something. More importantly, being part of the Seattle 2030 district and taking this cross-company approach is this idea of connectivity. Can these, ladies and gentlemen, become a network in the Seattle district where they continue beyond this training to share ideas, to share best practices, to share challenges? It's one of the kind of the fundamental tenets of the 2030 district approach is transparency and collaboration. And we want to see, okay, that's great, the ownership has agreed to this, the management's agreed to this, but what about the folks that are actually running the buildings? What does that mean? So to wrap up, we're really curious as to can this approach of community, of we, of team, can we then take that back up, run it back up the ladder to the management, to the ownership, to the other work we do in the built environment? How might property managers, asset managers, building owners benefit from this approach? And more importantly, how can we continue to share this with this group of folks, because you guys have so many more great ideas about how to do this? And what are some of the challenges and risks that would happen if it went somewhere else? So with that, thank you all very much.